Hi, everyone. Welcome to Transform and Thrive. I'm your host, Jessalin Lam, and this series is all about uncovering the stories of transformation, resilience, and growth that inspire us to embrace change and thrive in our lives. In each episode, I sit down with trailblazers who turn challenges into opportunities, sharing their pivotal lessons and mindset shifts that led to their transformation. Today's guest is Gardenia Diaz, the founder of Gardens Daycare, where she creates a family-oriented space for children to feel nurtured, safe, and welcomed. With a deep passion for early childhood development, she's dedicated her career to fostering a warm and inclusive learning environment for young minds. In addition to her work in childcare, Gardenia is a health and fitness coach, empowering women to shift their mindset around fitness and nutrition. She helps women build sustainable habits that prioritize well-being, confidence, and, and strength, both physically and mentally. And I'm really excited to have her on the podcast because she's also my fitness coach. And I'm working with her on my health and wellness journey. Her mission is to uplift people through caregiving and wellness. And she has a really inspiring story that I can't wait to dive into today.
Thank you
So,
for having
yes, thank
me.
you. So excited to have you as a guest today. And so, for everyone listening, whether you're navigating a challenge or seeking motivation to take the next step, you'll find a lot of inspiration today. And let's dive in.
Yeah.
Great, welcome. Okay, so we'll dive into your transformation. Can you share a significant challenge or turning point in your life that became a catalyst for transformation?
Absolutely. I would take it back to my younger days. I want to say that my biggest challenge in life has been making the decision to leave and planning an exit strategy out of an abusive marriage
Mm.
with two young children and being very young myself. This was a huge breakthrough for me because it took a long time to really get to a place where I felt like I was strong enough to figure things out. And my drive and my why, my purpose was my children. Um, it just forced me to find ways to grow, to expand, to support myself and my children, both mentally, emotionally, financially. And from that moment, I chose myself. And I think that despite the fear and the all the trauma and the mental that came with my experience um, in this relationship, it was the biggest point because I took a chance on me. And that was so empowering. Looking back at it, I can say that that really changed the course of the direction my life could have potentially taken.
That's huge. And I love that you're leading by example for your children to see that you're advocating for yourself. And it's like that phrase of like putting your oxygen mask on yourself before you put it on others. So we have to make sure mom is the best and thriving. And I can't even imagine, thank you for sharing that. I can't even imagine like what it was or was going through that when it's such a big challenge. I'm curious to hear like during that time, like what helped you overcome the challenge like during this time?
Definitely leading by example. Like at that point, my daughter was close to being 5, and I just knew that this was not something I wanted to. Didn't want it for her. Why would I want it for me? Um, there was, in looking back at it now, there was so many factors that played a part into how hard it was, and getting out of that situation now was forcing me to look at myself and say, okay, what are some of the things that I need to work on? And priority was obviously stability and, their well-being. Even at that point, there were so many things still lingering in your mind because you're hearing all these self-doubt thoughts that are, some of them are yours and some of them were put into your mind, when
Mhm.
someone's basically telling you that you're not going to survive without them, that you're not going to be able to make it. happen for yourself and your kids without them. So the journey altogether, I'm still working on myself. I will always be working on
Yeah.
myself. But the healing process has not been linear in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah. And I love what you said of always working on ourselves because we are always a work in progress. And even just being able to know that healing is not just like one and done. It takes
Hmm.
time, it can take the rest of our lives, and give yourself grace during that time too. And that actually leads me to something like really fascinating to talk about is like the mindset shift. Because what there always has to be something that shifts in how you think to make you have that realization. So I'm curious to hear what was your mindset shift or realization that helped you move forward and grow from this situation?
I think at the time I started to piece together through community. I was just people that walked into my life that inspired me one way or another, that maybe fed me words of encouragement. So
Mhm.
community is super important. I feel like around that time, the right people for the right reasons were in my life.
Mhm.
And it just brought me to a place where I said, one thing at a time. And then you start to see your little wins. So when you start taking chances, even though you're scared, even though the fear is never going to go away, but I took a chance on one thing and it was like, okay, it was one step forward. And I just took everything one step at a time. There were tons of setbacks, but the mindset was you have to make it out of, like, you have to make it. And there's no looking back.
Yeah. Yeah. And it sounds like you were also telling yourself, like, you deserve better. So this
Yes,
is like
100%.
the only way to go.
That took time. That really took time. And I feel like the shift in my mindset came later on as my kids got a little bit older and I was able to really take into account, sit down and reflect
Hmm.
on how much I've done. And it also took some people, in my life pointing out like, hey, listen, you have to sit down and celebrate your small wins and look back and take account into how far you've come. Because if you don't, you kind of just keep going.
Right. On
Um,
autopilot.
on autopilot,
Mhm.
absolutely. Absolutely. Like nothing felt like I was there. For example, I
Mhm.
finished my bachelor's before after I separated, I can't even remember, but I went back to school for my master's and I remember, finishing and it was like, okay, what's next? And I didn't really sit, I think back to it. My kids were there, they were present, but I didn't really sit into it and give myself the grace at the time to say, okay,
Mhm.
you can really celebrate yourself. You can really take this and give yourself a little bit of space in between things. But um, I feel like the real work inside of me started when I took more care of myself physically. And that is kind of
Mhm.
where there was that transition between, now you're out of the situation. You might be dealing with other factors, but in order to work on myself, I had to start taking better care of myself. So the mental came in, I want to say, once I really started to see and push myself physically.
Mm.
Now you're having other conversations with yourself in order to get to see that change.
Yeah.
Um, you start off with, doing things on your own, and then eventually you invest into a coach. And that's really where you get the tools that you can hold on to long term.
Yeah.
And once you start seeing yourself like, okay, I did this and I did that, same concept, the small wins, you start to repurpose and change the conversation in your head. You don't do it from a place of lack or hurt. You push yourself from a place of capability. You start to believe in yourself and really shift how you think about things that are hard.
Yeah, definitely. And even just working with you as my coach, I can definitely vouch for that of just being able to know that your health is such a big part of like your wealth and it increases your confidence, it increases your capacity to be able to like take on the world
Yeah.
because then you're prioritizing yourself first and that gives you so much more energy to do anything else that you
Yeah.
need to take care of.
And I love that you said that it helps with your confidence. amazing about that is that your growth isn't really for example, growth isn't about waiting for your confidence to kick in. It's
Hmm.
about taking those action steps despite feeling fearful,
Yeah.
and once you get to the other side, that's what starts to build your confidence. So sometimes we say, for example, when I have time, I'll start this, or when I can, and it's just because you're scared. That fear is powerful. And if you sit in that, you will miss out on so many opportunities, so many things that you can potentially bring you to the next level of growth in whatever it may be. That's just not in fitness, obviously.
Yeah.
Um, but there's something so strong about being responsible for yourself and holding yourself accountable that your growth is inevitable.
Yeah, and speaking of growth, when you're in that situation, it's really hard. But now that we are talking to look back on what has happened, I'm curious to hear some of your learning lessons during the challenging time. Were there like moments of failure along the way, and how did you learn from them?
There were tons,
Yeah.
tons. Something I thought about actually this morning was I was still in a place where, for example, I finished my master's and I wanted to open up a center-based program. And that was my goal at the time. Um, I met someone who had a program and was looking for a partnership. And despite my gut and my inner kind of telling me this isn't for you, I went for it. And thinking and looking back at it now, why? Why didn't I take those funds and why didn't I invest into myself doing it alone? And this was after I already had my own programs. This was supposed to be, kind of like the next bigger program. And it was because I yet didn't believe, even with having these successes already, even with the things that were under my belt, even with, the growth that I could potentially like look back at, I still didn't have full belief in myself. And I chose what seemed to be a good business idea. And throughout all that was a very expensive learning lesson.
Yeah.
So looking back at it, I definitely feel like trusting yourself is so important.
Yeah,
Trust
and like
your
taking
gut.
that risk to like believe in yourself. And then even think of it as like experiments. It's trial and error, seeing what
Mhm.
works, doesn't work. So there's like momentum and what do you want to move forward with?
And what lessons you pull out of it.
Hmm.
That's what's really, really important. It could be many different things. I think for me, I try to look back at everything and figure, and mindset shift too. There was never a moment where it was like, why is this happening to me? And if there were, because, I think as I was really, really young, there might have been, it wasn't about the why, it's what am I going to do about it? Because
And
some
like what can you
like,
learn from it?
yeah.
Yeah.
Even though I didn't necessarily understand the full concept, I knew that my actions, my reactions were what was going to count at the end of the day. The circumstances, you can't do anything about that.
Yeah. And that's key. So that's something why these episodes are all about growth mindset instead of being like a victim mindset, where exactly what you said, why is this happening to me? And then falling into that, where you're actually tapping into abundance, where you're like, what more can I do? What more can I create? And being able to manifest that into your life.
Yeah, definitely.
Amazing. Well, you also mentioned about community supporting you. So I'm curious to hear, like, were there specific communities or who or what supported you during this transformation in your life?
Um, I feel like I can think of one person specifically that um had the words of encouragement. I had a coach who was amazing and really could see my potential and was able to, although he said I was one of the hardest ones to ever work with because very strong-willed, and it was about, now looking back at it, I'm like, God, I gave you a hard time, huh? And you were here trying to help me. Really tapping into your potential and seeing what you don't yet see. And there's got to be, a way where you can convey that in the language that the person meet them where they are, in the language that they understand, so that they can eventually, start stepping into that power. Um, I think that when it comes to like investing in yourself, community wise, even if you don't have
Mhm.
the community, I can think of a couple of people that were in my life um, that were supportive and doing the best that they possibly could to support, within their means. But when I started to really invest into myself by hiring a coach, by pushing myself in those directions, that's when I really started to see the support that I needed, that I didn't
Mhm.
get.
And that's also a good point too, because community doesn't necessarily have to be an organization or a group of people. I think it is depending on like the person. It could be a therapist, it could be a coach, it could be a family member, friends. So just finding a supportive network and then making sure that they're there when you need that support.
Yes, like-minded people. You want to find people
Hmm.
that are, sharing the same, doesn't have to be the same mindset, the same growth, and
Yeah.
whatever level doesn't have to be in the same place, but you
Yeah.
want to find people that understand and can kind of speak your language.
Right. And have your best interest in, and will challenge you and help you you grow. Yeah. Well, and also, well, speaking about like just thriving and having just a supportive network to help you thrive, what about like the habits? Curious to hear like, are there practical steps or like habits that helped you thrive during this transformation?
Um, many things, and I want to say that they've shifted along the way as time
Hmm.
passed. Some of them don't serve me anymore, and I have new things. But to speak to the now, the number one thing that took me time was keeping my word to myself. I could show up for
Hmm.
anyone. I was the caregiver for my father, for my mom, like family wise, my kids,
Yeah.
but showing up for myself, for example, today I'm going to work out at 10 o'clock. Let's just give an example. But
Hmm.
so and so calls and says that they need something, I would prioritize all the things first. And I felt
Right.
a sense of urgency where almost like that was my calling at all times to serve. And while that's been a big part of my life, I started to take the steps where it's like, okay, I can say no and try that
Hmm.
out. Sticking to what you commit to yourself is super powerful. You start to
Yeah.
lose your confidence and your trust in yourself if you don't keep your word to yourself. So do what
Mm.
you say you're going to do.
I love that. And then making it non-negotiable where it's like, this is prioritizing me. And then you can help other people at when it's convenient for you, but like making sure like if you're going to the gym, that's your time.
And you show up so much better when you fill up your cup.
Right.
No other way to put it. And it could be alone time, it could be self-care, it could be anything. Only you know what really fills you up. Maybe you just
Hmm.
need a walk or silence. But you just show up better and more capable, more patient, more loving for those that need you and that you love.
I love that. Well, that's great to hear about how you're like filling your cup. And I'm also curious to hear how you define thriving. So that with transformation, with how it's shaped who you are today, what does thriving mean to you?
Um, Thriving, I think that thriving altogether, like it's not a destination for me. So
Mhm.
on a daily basis, I'm thriving in one way or another. So that comes with taking account for like small wins, and kind of taking time out to celebrate those small wins. But in growth and just exposure, doing things that seem scary, that are hard, I'm always trying to learn something new. Um, Thriving to me means that I'm reaching, goals, that I'm reaching, things that I set out for myself, that I'm putting myself in different and difficult positions to grow. And whether it goes how you expect or not, to me, the fact that you even take the steps is growth, is
Hmm.
thriving. Um, and you can look at that in so many different ways. But I'm thriving right now, just being here with you.
I love that. And even what you said about it just not being one place to go, like it's a journey, not a destination. And that's a really great way to mindset to think about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I also love that throughout this conversations, you've said a lot about how you're really good at celebrating your wins and being able to acknowledge that. And that can be easier said than done. So I'm curious for like someone who may be listening, they're like, okay, but how do you do that? So I'm curious for you to share, like, how do you celebrate or acknowledge your growth and success today? Like, are there specific things you do? Like, are you writing it down, putting on a vision board, or talking about it?
So journaling has been very helpful for me. Like I'm always taking time out to journal. And on the days that I don't, at some point I can feel like, okay, I didn't put my intentions out there for the day. Sometimes I
Mm,
can say them verbally. I have also been inspired by you to take more action steps for like non-negotiables for myself, whether
mm,
it's, a bath, a walk, some alone time, whatever it may be. But writing things down for me, affirmations are huge. To a point, I worked with a mindset coach who is a dear friend and an amazing woman. Um, one of her tasks was to write out your affirmations, what you wanted to see, how you wanted to show up. And I did this years ago, and it was game changing for me. Um, Maria also had us record in our own voice your affirmations and listen to them on a daily
mm.
basis. And that reprogramming, eventually, you really took a shift into how you were, the thoughts that you were having, and being accountable for um, just how you were speaking and caring for yourself. Huge game
Yeah.
changer.
I love that. And that's such a great way to like rewire your brain
Brain.
and then hear it in your own voice. That's like, and the fact that you did that daily, like that's incredible.
And I mean, you listen to a podcast, you listen to 10, 15
Yeah.
minutes. That's all it takes, or less.
Yeah. That's amazing. Well, also, I wanted to make sure that we have you share some resources for people, like what habits, tools, or resources has helped you maintain momentum throughout this journey.
Tracking, I think that it's very important to track and write out your goals. For example, you could do it on a monthly basis, on a weekly basis, but really putting it down on paper for me is big,
Hmm.
because I have something to look back at and reflect on, and then kind of see, okay, where can I improve in this department,
Yeah.
or why didn't I do that? Did it just not feel right for me anymore? You want to track your progress, and I say that with everything in terms of whether it's career, family, setting um, intentions for your health, and then once you start working out, you want to track that too, like your health and wellness, because you want to see the progress and or decide what needs to shift. Otherwise,
Mhm.
you're just going and seeing what sticks, and that's not necessarily going to feel good or build your confidence.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's really key to be able to track progress and then evaluate along the way. So it's not just like one and done, you do at the beginning of the year, never look at it.
New Year's resolutions, guys.
Exactly. That doesn't work. It's not effective. Well, to wrap it up, I would love for you to share advice of like whether it's one message, mantra, or even an affirmation or advice you'd like to leave people with who are struggling to take that first step towards their own transformation.
So this was my 2024 mantra, and I think it's going to be a life mantra for me. But it was fear's always going to be there. Do it
Mm.
anyways.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, like it's in all departments. Anything that's new and unfamiliar, it's not that it's not doable, it's that it's scary. So you
Hmm.
are capable, it's just unfamiliar until you do it.
And that's what's part of growth, where you step through that fear and try to make it happen and take action on it.
Yes. So we're here to
Amazing.
thrive, fear or not, we're doing it.
Amazing. Well, this was a really inspiring conversation. I really appreciate you being here. And it's that a really a reminder for everyone that transformation begins when we take action. We embrace our challenges and learn from those setbacks in our life and continue to move forward. So thank you for joining us on Transform and Thrive. And so for everyone listening, if today's episode resonated with you, please give it a thumbs up, share it with someone who can benefit from hearing your story. Subscribe to the channel for more stories of growth and empowerment. And until next time, keep growing and thriving, everyone. Thank you.
You.